Hi everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Pixel Paul. Thanks for pressing play as ever. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, if you can hit the subscription button, that would be very much appreciated. So yeah, thanks for joining me. Something a little bit different for this video this time. One I've been thinking about doing for a couple of months actually, but it's only now where I've sort of thought, yeah, let's do this now. Let's pull the trigger on it and get it done. So if you're anything like me, you love your games. Obviously, you're on a gaming channel, so you obviously love your video games. But you love playing them, you love buying them, and you just think about video games all the time. Yeah, we're addicted to them, obviously. But I spend a lot of time sort of just idly sort of thinking away about video games and games I'd like to play, games I'd like to see, and I do sort of come up with these little ideas of games that I would like to play or like to see made in the future. And, you know, no matter how sort of fantastical they are, I sometimes have these thoughts about them. You know, I'm no game developer or anything like that. It's far from it. It's just purely things that sort of pop into my head and think, oh, that would make for quite a good game. So yeah, I've got a few of those ideas, and what I thought I would do is maybe just do a quick video and show you some of the ideas for video games that I've had in my head for the last sort of few months, or one or two of them maybe for the last few years. So yeah, I called this a mashup video. I guess mashup kind of covers it. I mean, a few of these ideas that I've got for games are crossovers, I guess you'd call them. Some of them are existing series or existing franchises where I have then sort of maybe taken them in a different direction, or maybe used elements from another game series and merged it into another game series. So yeah, crossovers, mashups, whatever you want to call it, just ideas for fantasy games. That's the whole sort of aim of the whole point of this video. So before I crack on, I must just advise that my voice still sounds a little bit croaky. I have been a little bit ill over the last few weeks. I think I had a cough in the last video actually, and I haven't still shifted it from then, so my voice is still a little bit croaky, so I do apologise for that. But bear with me, and we'll go through the first few games. So obviously, with these games, before people start dropping comments into the comment section, I'm fully aware of, you know, the whole sort of behind the scenes legal ramifications and political ongoings of what happens with games, licenses and all that sort of thing. You know, I do realise that with some of these games, you know, licenses are held by one developer and some of them are sort of exclusive characters to one console. But this is, like I say, it's just a bit of fun, just complete sort of fantasy. And that's the case with this first game. So the two games involved are Uncharted and Tomb Raider. So you can kind of see where I'm going with this. So my sort of first idea for a game, and this is one that I've been dreaming of for a long time, would be a Nathan Drake and Lara Croft crossover game. I just think it's money printed immediately. I just think it would be such an amazing game. Yeah, okay, it's not likely to ever happen because obviously the Uncharted series is exclusive to PlayStation. Lara Croft is obviously a very sort of multi-format game. And, you know, you're talking two different developers as well. But stranger things have happened, you know. When you sort of talk crossovers, you tend to see a lot of crossovers with fighting games and beat-em-ups. So we've had like Street Fighter across Tekken. We've had Mortal Kombat versus DC Universe. So there's a lot of beat-em-ups that have that kind of crossover. We've also seen like Mario and Sonic as well. And whoever thought, you know, 20, 30 years ago, whoever thought that Mario and Sonic would be in a same game together? So who knows? An Uncharted Tomb Raider game, for me, would be huge, immense. It could be amazing. So in terms of how that game could work, so in my mind, how I think it would work would be for the game to sort of follow more Uncharted's kind of story-driven kind of game, rather than go down the route of the Tomb Raider games, the last trilogy of Tomb Raider games, where we saw them become a little bit more open world. I think they would follow more of a, especially when you've got two iconic characters like this as well, it would be more of a story-driven game, and I think we would see possibly Lara and Nathan maybe going up against each other as competition, as treasure hunters for a specific treasure or a specific hidden city or something like that. And they would be opponents almost, hunting for that relic or treasure or city or whatever. And then as the story develops, possibly you would then see the two characters maybe come together. So you could start the game with, Nathan Drake, play a few chapters with Nathan, then you'd cross over to Lara and play a few games with Lara. As with both, well, certainly with Uncharted, you have like a companion character that goes along with you. So you'd have Sully. Lara would have someone. They always seem to pick someone random for Lara. I know there was the big sort of Hawaiian guy, so maybe he could be in there. But then somewhere in between, the two characters would come together and you could play as either character, perhaps. That's one way you could do it. Perhaps you could do it maybe as a Resident Evil 2 type game where you control one character and play the game through with them, and then you can play the game again as a different as the other character and play the game through from their point of view as well. So possibilities either way. But either way, I just think an action-adventure game with both Nathan Drake and Lara Croft would just be huge. I think it would be an immense game, really epic. You could make it so cinematic. And yeah, I'd just love to see it. They are two of my favourite game characters as well, so that's why I just would love to see them both to come together. If they do ever make it, I want to see a scene, though, where Nathan Drake is sat in Croft Manor with Lara Croft, and he makes some sort of joke about her butler and how he should be locked in a freezer. That would just top it off for me. So, in terms of a name, I don't know. Uncharted Tomb Raiders, Nathan and Lara, something like that. I don't know. Maybe you'll come up with a better name for it than me. But yeah, I think that would be a fantastic game. Let me know what you think. Okay, so the second game. So these two games might seem like a very sort of random pairing, and you'll be thinking, well, how are you putting these two games together? So for this one, what I'm doing is taking one game series, well, it's not a series really, but a game franchise, if you like, and taking elements from a second game to make a brand new game. So the first one is Alien Isolation, and then the second one is A Plague Tale. Yeah, bit random, but bear with me. So the nucleus of the game would be Alien Isolation. And if I gave you the name that I sort of came up with for this game, it would be Alien Isolation 2 Hadley's Hope. So Hadley's Hope, if you're a fan of the Aliens film, you'll know Hadley's Hope was the name of the colony on LV-426, which is where most of the film Aliens is set. The colony of Hadley's Hope obviously has a backstory, and I know this backstory has been covered in a series of books, so you could sort of take elements from those books perhaps. There are rumours as well that there's some sort of live action show. I don't think it's another movie, but there is a live action show coming out, and there were rumours that possibly this was going to be set sort of with a similar sort of story. So my idea for the game would be to set the game from the moment that who you would be the main character, Newt, who is the only surviving member of Hadley's Hope at the start or during Aliens the movie. You would see the developments that happen from the moment they find the derelict spaceship on LV-426, and then the aftermath of what happens when the sort of alien xenomorphs take over the colony. Right up to sort of the last stand, as they called it in the film, the one hell of a fight, right up until the moment sort of Newt is found by the Marines in the movie Aliens. So Newt would play the main sort of character. That's who you would play in the game. Now, where the Plague Tale game sort of comes into this is the relationship between, in this game, Amicia and Hugo. And that is something I would use within Alien Isolation 2. So have you as the main character as Newt, the little girl, but her brother Timmy would sort of be your secondary character, if you like. And yeah, that would be basically it. You would play those two characters through, the events that unfold before the Marines arrive, before the whole colony is taken over, and you sort of see the story develop and how Newt actually ends up being the sole survivor of that colony before the Marines arrive and rescue her. For me, Alien Isolation, the first game, obviously was done in a first person's perspective. You could still do that. Possibly it would move into more of a third-person perspective, so you get to know the sort of two characters. I think from a first-person perspective, it's quite hard to do. The only problem with that is you probably would lose a little bit of the suspense that you get from Alien Isolation. So there would be some sort of compromise I think you would have to sort of make to make Alien Isolation 2. But again, I think the potential for that game could be huge to tell that story, especially with people who love the movies Alien and Aliens, to sort of tell the story of Hadley's Hope within a video game like that, and playing as Newt, especially playing as a child as well. You know, you'd have a whole different sort of perspective from the game. You know, there wouldn't be weapons involved in this game, just like in Alien Isolation, where weapons were, you know, not used particularly. It would all be about sort of stealth, survival, avoiding the aliens, whilst watching, like I say, the sort of horrific events that lead up to the demise of the Hadley's Hope colony. So yeah, Alien Isolation 2, Hadley's Hope. That's my second fantasy game. So fantasy game number 3. Now this is kind of a mashup in a way, possibly again sort of using one game's core sort of gameplay elements and maybe putting another license in it, or a similar sort of game. So the game is Guardians of the Galaxy, and the second game, and more sort of the license really, is X-Men. Now I've gone for X-Men, but seeing that X-Men and the Fantastic Four are about to sort of join the Marvel Comics universe, cinematic universe I should say, you could actually use Fantastic Four or X-Men. Part of me actually thinks Fantastic Four might work better, but essentially what you're doing is using the sort of template that Guardians of the Galaxy put in place. You know, the gameplay for this is incredible. You know, you essentially playing all the characters. You are mainly playing as Star-Lord, obviously, but all the characters in Guardians of the Galaxy are involved in this game, and you, to a degree, have sort of control over what they do. You know, you command them to do certain things and attack certain enemies and that sort of thing. And I just think you could do pretty much the same with either X-Men or with the Fantastic Four. How they managed to pull off Guardians of the Galaxy really was really amazing, because it's such a great game. And like I say, when you've got sort of 5 individual characters like they have in the Guardians, to sort of have them all involved within that game, but you never feel sort of shortchanged from any of the characters whilst you're playing it, I think that would be amazing to be able to sort of do that again, but with, like I say, Fantastic Four or X-Men. Like I say, I'm kind of veering more now. The more and more I think about it, the more I sort of think maybe the Fantastic Four would be possibly a better angle to go. But I don't know. I mean, you could do both. X-Men as well. There's so many X-Men characters though. How would you be able to choose 4, 5, 6 X-Men characters from the huge array of X-Men that are out there? It would be quite difficult. I suppose you could use the sort of X-Men. Well, it's 97 now, isn't it? The X-Men 97 core X-Men group from the series that's about to land on Disney. So you could use that. You could use the original X-Men possibly, where there was was it 5, 6 maybe members. So you could do it that way. But either way, I think another game based or done like Guardians of the Galaxy, with the X-Men or Fantastic Four characters involved, with a whole brand new storyline, I think that would be really, really good. What would I call it? Well, probably X-Men or Fantastic Four, to be honest. Okay, so game number 4. Again, this is kind of more using the idea of another game and using a license within that type of game. Now, the core sort of game, I've chosen this one, which is Mass Effect, but you could actually possibly use other games as well as a sort of template for it. The license that I would love to use would be Star Trek. So, I'm not a massive Star Trek fan particularly. I do love the second Star Trek movie, The Wrath of Khan. I think it's one of the great sci-fi films ever made. But I've never particularly watched the TV show or some of the newer Star Trek films. The Chris Pine ones were okay. The first 2 were alright. The first one, so I'm not a massive Star Trek fan, but I do quite like the first 2 or 3 sort of Star Trek films with William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, all those guys. Star Trek games. Now, recently there haven't been that many Star Trek games. Over the course of the last sort of 30 years, I'd say, there's actually a huge amount of Star Trek games, especially on like home computer and PC. There's a massive amount of Star Trek games. A lot of those are more kind of strategy type games, I would say. And then more recently, Star Trek has sort of become, in the gaming world, and possibly even in the movie world, very much sort of geared more towards action, space battles. Certainly, games like this. I think there was a Voyager game. They all feel very much sort of Star Trek combat, which is kind of the direction that the original movies did go. Obviously, the first movie was quite sort of deep and sci-fi like, whereas the sort of following Star Trek films became a little bit more sort of like naval battles in space almost. And in my mind, I always thought sort of Star Trek was always about that space exploration, going where no one has gone before, 5-year missions, that sort of thing. And I guess gaming wise, I guess you could argue, certainly maybe back in the day on PlayStation 2s and Xbox and that sort of, when the sort of tech wasn't as advanced, you couldn't make games as big. They had to sort of concentrate on the combat side of Star Trek. So you can kind of understand it. But now, when we have games like Mass Effect and the Mass Effect trilogy, Mass Effect Andromeda, even Starfield, No Man's Sky, and also, I mean, you could take elements from a game called Journey to the Savage Planet, which is a little bit more sort of campy sort of sci-fi, but that's all about exploring an alien world. So for me, this whole sort of mashup idea would be to have a Star Trek exploration game. You could even have a Star Trek 5-year mission exploration game. I'm not saying you make the game last 5 years, although that would not be a bad idea. Certainly get value for money potentially. But yeah, just to have like that sort of Starfield or No Man's Sky sense of scale of exploration that you could have, but within that Star Trek universe. And I think that just sort of brings that whole Star Trek franchise back into where it's supposed to be, I think. Like I say, I'm no expert on Star Trek, but that was always the impression I was got, that it was always about reaching out to new planets, finding new civilizations, and possibly that's where a new Star Trek game could go. Deep exploration into space, like I say, 5-year mission on like the Enterprise or any other ship, I guess, with new characters, maybe using the old characters. Don't know. But I just think something like that could really sort of reinvigorate Star Trek into the gaming world. Possibly not. Maybe people would find it boring. I don't know. But I think it's a half decent idea. What would I call it? I don't know. Star Trek 5-year mission? Something like that, perhaps. But yeah, let me know what you think. Star Trek with Mass Effect, or No Man's Sky, or Starfield, or Journey to the Savage Planet. So, the fifth and final game for this video. And it's not the end of the ideas that I've got. I have got a few other ideas as well, but I wanted to stick to just the 5 for this one. And I think, potentially, this is the one that possibly could happen. I just think with the way... Well, if I show you the first game. So the first game is Mario Kart 8. So we all know Mario Kart 8. I can't remember how many years old this is now, but originally Mario Kart 8 came out on the Wii U. We all know that. This Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is now a completely different beast compared to that original version of it. It's twice the size, twice as many characters, twice as many cars, with all the online added sort of packs and everything. Mario Kart 8, for me, is probably as good as it is ever going to get for Mario Kart. I personally don't see where they are going to go with Mario Kart now, because everything they have about Mario Kart is packed into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and the add-ons. So, and let's not make any bones about it, Mario Kart is probably one of the biggest selling franchises now for Nintendo. So whatever they do console-wise next, there will be some sort of Mario Kart game, or they will want some sort of Mario Kart game. This game is still selling. It's probably, I would imagine this is one of, if not the highest selling game on the Switch. So there's no way they're just going to let this franchise die like they have done F-Zero and, to a degree, I guess, Metroid. So Mario Kart will continue in some form, and that's what got me thinking, what do they do next? So my answer is to mash it up a little bit, taking the cue from Super Smash Bros. So, Super Smash Bros. It's basically a Nintendo brawler. So my idea is, let's get away from the Mario Kart sort of centered theme of Mario Kart, and let's go to Nintendo Kart. I'll say Nintendo Kart. It doesn't have to stop with Nintendo, but as a start, Nintendo Kart instead of Mario Kart. So what does that mean? Well, essentially bringing in all of Nintendo. Like I said, Mario Kart is obviously sort of centered around the Mario universe. They did start to bring in, I know, characters like Link and the Splatoon guys into Mario Kart 8. There's an F-Zero based track as well. So we know that, there have been elements of other Nintendo franchises within Mario Kart. But why not just expand that further and just make the whole sort of game centered around the Nintendo universe? So we're talking about bringing in Link again, bringing Princess Zelda, bringing Samus Aran, bringing Kirby, bringing, who else is there? There's tons of characters, isn't there? You could bring so many Nintendo characters into that game. Obviously, just bringing characters into the game isn't going to be enough, though. So you're going to have tracks based on planets from Metroid. You could have another track based on Hyrule from Zelda. You could have Kirby-based tracks, Pokemon-based tracks. I've got things written down. F-Zero tracks again, obviously. So, yeah, you'd have extra tracks. But I also think then you have to go a step further, and you'd have to give it something a little bit different to separate it from Mario Kart, and that would come with the power-ups and how you sort of approach each race. So at the moment with Mario Kart, obviously all the characters have the same power-ups or weapons that they can use during the races. So for Nintendo Kart, you could mix it up and have offensive weapons and defensive weapons. So, for example, you would have Link with his Master Sword. He could also have bombs, a hook shot, but for defensive, he could have his shield as well. So it would just give it a little bit more of a strategic element, if you like, to the game. Same with Samus Aran. She'll be able to use her arm cannon, maybe use the Powerball that she turns into for speed boost or that sort of thing. Kirby could swallow enemies and spit them out behind him. Opportunities in that game could be huge if they could, if they really put their minds to it. And if anyone could do it, Nintendo could do it, because it's their characters. So yeah, I just think Nintendo Kart would be the most obvious way to go with Mario Kart now. But you don't just stop at Nintendo characters. Obviously, we've seen in Smash Bros. Characters from other games come into that as well. So we've seen Solid Snake, Cloud. I'm trying to think of some of the other characters that have gone in there. But there's been other characters from other gaming franchises that they brought in. So why don't they open it up even further? Mega Man could be in there. Someone from Castlevania, the Belmonts from Castlevania could be in there. Cloud from Final Fantasy could be in there. Opportunities are endless. I know, exactly. Yep, licenses and all that sort of thing would be probably a bit of an issue. But again, this is just for fun. It's a bit of fantasy. But if you could start throwing all those characters into the game, maybe even Banjo-Kazooie could show up. Ratchet and Clank could show up. All right, maybe we're going a little bit far into the sort of fantasy realm of it now, but you get the idea. So I'm thinking, Nintendo Kart for the Nintendo's next big console, whenever that will be. Yeah, that's got to be a system seller, hasn't it? So those were my first kind of Fantasy 5 games, mashups, crossovers, whatever you want to call them. Just 5 ideas for games that I've sort of had over the last few months or even years, possibly. So I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Do you think any of them would be, massive successes? Do you think any of them are actually doable? Do you think any of these games could actually happen? I also want to hear in the comments section if you want to drop in your own ideas. If you've got ideas for games, just drop it in the comments section. Doesn't matter how daft they are. Forget about licenses, forget about legal things and everything like that. Exclusivity and all that. If you want Master Chief to go into Nintendo Kart, say it. If you want Master Chief to go into, I don't know, Call of Duty game or something like that, just get ideas down into the comment section. And then if I do a second part to this, because like I say, I do have some other ideas for other games which I could maybe go into as well. But if you've got any ideas of your own, drop them in the comment section and I'll mention them on that next video as well. This is an interactive channel, so yeah, make sure you do. Thanks for listening to me warble away. It's a bit of a brain dump, this video. My voice is just about held on, just about. So yeah, thanks for putting up with me again. Thanks for watching. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, if you can hit the subscription button, give the video a thumbs up, very much appreciated, and I'll see you for the next video. Bye guys.